Fatherland videos. We have a Atlantis lost story tonight from Gothic Fantasy. The Lost Land of Atlantis, Forgotten Peoples, and one of their short lost stories. This book is forwarded by Dr. Jennifer Fuller, Flame Tree Publishing. And we're on page 418, reading the lost story called The Outsider by Lucy Zhang. Let's see what this lost story of the lost land of Atlantis is trying to tell us. The outsider found the child deep within the limestone cliffs that resemble petrified trees. It cracked open the limestone and plucked the girl out, carefully removing her from the jagged shell, chipped stone like crying lint from a wool sweater. After the girl lay cradled in its arms, it closed the limestone cliff, sealing the crack and jostling it until it fit back into place. A tiny hollow at the limestone center where the girl had once been. One month passed before the girl from the limestone cracked her eyes open. The outsider knew little about how to raise children beyond what it had observed from human communities. Children had to be fed, put to sleep, and occasionally taken outside to exercise so that their bodies could maintain proper locomotive abilities. It gathered bundles of dandelions and blackberries and fed them to the girl. She ate whatever the outsider could saft, even the shells of eggs stolen from the neglectful bird's nest. She followed the outsider on expeditions for water. Her bare feet cushioned the surfaces of black dust that seemed to leak from the outsider's body, spreading across the ground in thick waves. Thinning the further out and spread, she slept when the sky turned dark and woke with the sun. And already awake, the outsider sitting at the main table, curtains from dawn closed, the room dark, a mug of water held in its wisp of hands. Another month passed when the girl began to speak. "Where are your hands?" she asked, as they packed their few items in sacks and left their shelter for a new one. It was a new safe to stay too long in one place. It was never safe to stay too long in one place, or else risk crossing paths with humans. And humans were always prowling with weapons, trying to kill off the curse. The outsider walked beside the girl, holding her hand so she wouldn't spring forward. She liked to chase after small critters, jumping at those that flew, and stomping after those crawled like lightning bolts streaking across the dirt. What do you mean? I've got hands, the outsider replied. But if you got no fingers, the girl said, poking at the clouds of black dust pulling at the outsider's wrist. I don't need fingers to have hands. Don't you? The girl asked, staring skeptically at the dust. Staring skeptically as the dust swirled and spiraled. Look, I could still hold you. The outsider lifted the girl into his arms, and she squealed as she clutched to his arm, while his hands supported her legs. I can walk, she demanded, and the outsider set her back down. It's going to be bright soon. Hurry up, the outsider warned. The girl nodded to begin to speed up her pace, hitting each foot on the ground, heel to toe, with such deliberate precision that the outsider wondered if she was mocking him. Don't want to get caught. Don't want to get caught, she sang. No, you don't, the outsider affirmed, even though the girl would probably be fine under the sunlight. Only the outsider's body risked evaporating under light. It was nearly impossible for the scattered particles to find their way back and reassemble into a cohesive structure. It has lost its head that way. A careless mistake where Ray struck his body from the between the sparse branches of warped trees. The outsider's head had disappeared like aerosols before the rest of his body could find refuge behind a boulder. It was, of course, able to reform the head with the remainder of its mass, manifesting from the memory a neck, the curved neck to skull, the sharp jut of a chin, and a facial features extruded from the remainder of its coherent form. But the newly constructed head could not substitute a true head. It could not think, guide, or provide a voice of reason. The head only stand in place, an illusion for onlookers in itself, so adapted to emanation and accustomed to making decisions without a brain and only a heart. The outsider occasionally forgot his head was not real. When the outsider lost his fingers to the sun, When the outsider lost his fingers to the sun, it didn't bother reconstructing them. Its particles had already filled its gas where its fingers had once been. Its hands, more like foam of water, fluid and easy adaptable to the current use case. The outsider didn't need precision anyway, not to pick up heavy things, not to pull the limestone girl along, not to protect the girl from wolves and prowl at night, not to snatch entire nest of eggs to cook for breakfast. How are those people still fine under daylight? The girl asked. She pointed downward at the hills below, where a person in a large straw hat rode a mule along the road. The sunrise had already begun to warm the ground and was brightening the lower fields of the wheat crops and olive trees. They must be cursed, the outsider answered. That's not fair. Curses shouldn't be for everyone. That's not fair. Curses should be for everyone. The outsider pushed the girl along, hurrying her to the next rest point, a shaded space behind a large, slanted slab of stone that resembled a mountain more than rock, probably because they are blessed by the earth. Only those abandoned by the earth get marked for removal. Curses like garbage collectors. You should ask the garbage collector for your fingers back. How else can I marry you when I grow up? You need a finger for a ring, otherwise, you can't get married. A ring doesn't dictate the feasibility of a marriage. That's what the book you got me said. The princess got a ring and then they could get married. To a prince, not an outsider. What's the difference? The outsider shrugged. Princesses don't vanish so easily. Sure they do. They die when they get old or are killed in battle. They don't run the risk of disintegrating. I don't get it, the girl huffed, planting her foot on the ground and placing her hands on her waist. Why can't I marry you? The outsider sat behind the boulder as the sun rose and cast a long shadow over his body, the dark of the shadow blending with its particles, near black on black like it was truly invisible, even though if you squinted, you can make out pockets of an abyss, like certain areas ended right there and the others fell deep down, tunneling further and further away forever. I don't love humans, the outsider said. Then I don't need to be one. Well, it's good to have conviction. The outsider lay on the ground, its body scattered at the crevice of the boulder. It rested like a shadow, pooling in cracks, sinking deeper and deeper until the crack itself was no longer a sanctuary, but rather a limitation of how far it could disappear. The girl dug her fingers into the dirt, drawing circles deeper and deeper until the dirt cracked her nails. When she grew bored of drawing, she crawled to the edge of the boulder and peeked her head out towards the field. The sprinkling of houses, the sunlight, everything was moving. Mules trekking up and down slopes, birds flittering sporadically from tree to shrub to ground, and human of two heaving their plows of walking along the river, soldiers stationed by the border with all their tall guns and tall hats. There are more soldiers than normal humans, she commented. You need a lot of soldiers to fight to be cursed, the outsider replied. Will they come here? This is probably too far. Even the soldiers aren't daring enough to venture so deep into the cursed land. The girl looked around. Looks the same here to me. I'm not feeling any more or less cursed. The outsider extended an arm into the air, filling the atmosphere. The air was heavier than saturated with cursed ashes, outsider bodies, and disintegrated biological matter that hadn't quite completed its transformation into an outsider shell before it had been eaten by the dawn. It smelled like copper and charcoal, like the leather being tanned over a flame. Of course it's not. It's all relative. We've yet to visit a proper, functional, untouched human town. Do you want to go? We will go. It's a long way ahead, so I'll take a while. It is further than the limestone cliffs where I woke. Much farther, in a place where there are limestone people, where people don't need to wait to come screaming to life, no held in stone until someone can crack them free. I'm glad you found me, the girl nodded. It could have been a better time with fewer curse. I'm sure your parents would have preferred that. Are they still my parents if I don't remember them? No, one in the limestone remembers their parents, but those parents are still parents. The girl watched a soldier marching along the perimeter of a field, wondering if it was hot under that tall, dark blue hat under the sun. I remember the limestone, the cool encasing, the rough surface, and the line with my arms and legs and back, the hard support. Don't you think the limestone birthed me? I can't fault you for what you don't remember, the outsider shrugged. Sit with me, she said. The girl retreated to the center behind the boulder shifted her weight until she could lean her head on the outsider's lap, which had materialized moments ago from the black particles like foam. How do I become like you? She asked, closed her eyes, and stretching her neck from side to side. Be born abandoned, get cursed, look at the sun too much even though it triggers the curse. I think I'm 2/3 of the way there, and then we'll be able to get married. The outsider had to carry the girl over most of the first mountain because of the rocks were too slippery and steep for her to reach. It created a harness from his body, looping around her thighs and over her shoulders, so she wouldn't peel away like dried bark. It could have formed a stronger, tighter hold if its mass remained, but at present, this will have to suffice. The girl snapped. She was beginning to sleep for longer and longer, hours perhaps because of the cooling season. The outsider had heard the limestone children took longer to adjust to consistent waking hours, having spent decades dormant and scheduled from outside change. When the girl woke, it was only for several minutes, long enough the outsider could ensure ingested sufficient nutrition so her body could grow, but too short to hold her usual conversations. Are we almost there yet? The girl had asked slowly as the outsider set her down and prepared her for a handful of blackberries. They had nearly made it around the highest slope, but the rocks remained too jagged and too long, like sharpened and studded walls that only plummet creatures to the bottom. Almost, it said, but the girl had already fallen asleep, and it wrapped its particles of limbs around her and continued the descent to the human town. It would need to hurry before it got too cold, as the town closed its entry during the winter, when the curse was most contagious and the humans most susceptible. The outsider continued to climb through day and night, its body thinning like dunes flayed by the wind. When they finally made it to town, the trees bared their branches like limbs crippled by winter, and the gates remained propped open for visitors. The outsider's body disappeared, and it appeared no different from the dust kicked up from the ground, but it possessed enough strength and substance to lower the girl gently. Parts of its arms flattened to the blanket, to the cushion, the impact, and prevent the hard pavement from waking her. As the sun rose and the people began to emerge from their homes, the outsider watched and waited for someone to take her in.